Dustin from Roland here, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the new features in the TR-1000 version 1.2 update. We've added new MFX, including some classic Roland favorites, leveled up the LFO capabilities big time, introduced some new sound generators, and more. Let's jump in. The MFX section has 4 new effects added. First up, SP303 Vinyl Sim. We can use this to add some vinyl noise crackles and wow and flutter, but this effect is really known for its unique flavor of compression. In this pattern, we've got a mix of sampled drum chops with additional drum voices layered together. It's sounding pretty good, but there's a lot of character tucked away in these sample chops, and engaging the 303 Vinyl Sim can slam everything together and really bring some of that up. And remember, we have control over whether or not the delay and reverb are routed through the MFX, so here we can also hear the reverb trails getting squashed down in the mix. Next, we have the SP404 Vinyl Sim. This one focuses more on the frequency characteristics of vinyl playback and is a great effect to assign to the morph slider. In addition to the options that we have for routing things like reverb and delay through or bypassing the MFX section, we can also do this with individual tracks. For this next new effect, Cassette Sim, let's use this chord part, drum loop, and a vocal sample. And bring in the new Cassette Sim. You can change the tone, the hiss, the age of the tape, drive and wow and flutter. Now we can introduce some other tracks that are bypassing the MFX to fill things out nicely. And finally, we have DJFX Delay, an expanded version of the classic SP DJFX looper that throws your looped audio through a delay afterwards, allowing for lots of great hands-on stutters, glitches, and smooth sweeps that continue to trail off after the effect is disengaged. The LFOs in the TR-1000 have been given some really powerful new features that allow for expanded sound design possibilities. While a huge number of parameters have always been available as destinations to be modulated by the LFOs, settings for the sound generators, filters, effects, and so on, sometimes the part we're working on may call for some additional movement, but we want that movement to be more rhythmic, more locked in with the pattern sequence, or we don't want the constant oscillation of a standard LFO. So the first new addition in the LFO section we'll check out is LFO mode. Let's start with this simple filtered supersaw. Let's go ahead and apply a saw LFO to the filter cutoff. And this is already synchronized to pattern tempo. Now we can change LFO mode to trigger, and this will reset the cycle of the LFO with every note on the pattern sequencer. This can be really useful and is in some ways starting to behave a bit more like an envelope, but of course the LFO still continues its movement indefinitely. Moving to the next LFO mode, trig one time, this will set up the LFO to play through its cycle just once, then hold until a new trigger is received. We can also adjust the phase to set the start point. Now, we've got an envelope behavior that looks something like this. Let's bring up another sound, this time an ACB CR78 low bongo, which doesn't have any sort of pitch envelope. We'll go to the LFO section. This time we'll use a sine wave LFO, and we'll select the next mode, which is trigger 1/2 time. Now the LFO will only play through half its cycle. Let's change the phase also on this one. And we can get quite a unique shape that wouldn't be possible to create using traditional envelopes, affecting a parameter, the tune, which wasn't available with this kind of control before. In addition to track LFOs, let's not forget we also have a kit LFO that can be routed to kit effects, including the analog effects section. For the new triggering options, we'll use the dedicated trigger out track for controlling the kit LFO. Here it is, assigned to the analog high-pass filter cutoff as well as the width on the sideband filter in the MFX section. This creates a great performance effect that can be played by adding and removing steps on the trigger track. As we can see, this is a great addition to the existing track envelopes we already have for amplitude and filter cutoff. Be sure to try this out on things like FM sound generators for deeper control. Analog voices for fresh new capabilities. Track effect settings and sends, and so on. The LFO section now also has a new sample and hold option. To hear this clearly, we'll first play a simple sine wave with the LFO applied to pitch. Settings for sample and hold will divide the LFO into equal stepped values based on the time of the LFO cycle. Let's shorten up that sine wave and put a few more steps on the sequencer. For more percussive sequencing, this is great if we don't want any smooth movements of the desired parameter, but evolving stepped movements over time. To lock the sample and hold in even more with the pattern, there's also a trigger setting, which will grab the current value of the LFO with every sequencer step. We can hear this effect here with the decay of this clap. The LFO is also free running, so we get some consistent variation in playback. We've added two new analog circuit behavior sound generators, the 808 and 909 baseline. These ACB voices are optimized to be used for tuned bass duties, with simplified controls, default pitch at a perfectly in-tune C, and greatly expanded decay times. Tonal color can be controlled using the excite parameter on the 808 and drive parameter on the 909. In a pattern we heard earlier, we were using the 808 baseline, with its coarse tuning sequenced across 4 variations, and excite cranked all the way up so it cuts through the mix. Now these are definitely still great for kick drum duties, and with a little motion recording we can get nice hybrid kick and bass sequences going, like on this 909 bassline. Let's add some LFO to drive and delay send. Nice. It's It's now possible to independently pan each sound generator on the 4 layer tracks, and we can access this in the amp screen. This is great for basic layering, for example like this with 2 different rimshot samples panned 50% left and 50% right. When they hit together, it's relatively centered, but when sequenced independently on a single track, they occupy their own space. This is also great for synth layers. Here we've got 2 droning sawtooth oscillators panned hard left and right with some delay and reverb. Since they have a slight LFO moving their pitch in the opposite directions, we hear a pronounced stereo beating between the two. Let's add in a phaser to really space things out, using another new feature in version 1.2, quick on and off switches for track effects. Some other new features we've added include new gain staging options, which can be found in the System Sound menu. We've got Mix Out Gain, which can now go from -14 all the way up to +18 dB, as well as a boost for the USB audio stream output. So we can get that boosted up on the way into our DAW. Also found in the System Settings menu under MIDI, we now have a new MIDI mode. We can go from single channel to each track channel. And with this mode, we have a dedicated MIDI channel for each track. This also allows for playback of sample slices on an individual track using chromatic MIDI input. Also, mute trigger source options have been added to a number of ACB sound generators. Go grab the version 1.2 update from the TR-1000 downloads page. And be sure to also get the updated TR-1000 app via Roland Cloud Manager. Thanks a lot for listening, and see you next time.